Have you ever felt the confusion of someone who cares deeply about you suddenly pulling back? It's a strange feeling, right? One minute, they're showering you with attention, and the next, they're distant or unresponsive. It's easy to assume that this means they've lost interest, but that's not always the case. In fact, their behavior could be a reflection of something much deeper, something related to their own emotions and internal struggles. Let's start by considering why this happens. One possibility is that they might be experiencing emotional overwhelm. When someone loves you deeply, they can become vulnerable, and sometimes that vulnerability leads them to withdraw as a form of self-protection. They might feel like they need space to process their emotions, or they could be afraid of becoming too dependent on you. Another reason could be that they're struggling with insecurity or fear of rejection. People who care deeply often overthink situations and wonder whether their feelings are reciprocated or if they're doing something wrong in the relationship. During these moments of doubt, they might pull back to regain a sense of control. It's also possible that they just need time to reflect on their own life, goals, or personal challenges. When we're in a relationship, it can sometimes be hard to maintain a sense of individuality, and taking a step back allows them to recalibrate. In any case, it's important to recognize that this behavior isn't necessarily a reflection of how they feel about you. In fact, it could be an indication that they care more than you realize. By understanding this behavior and not taking it personally, you can approach the situation with empathy and patience, fostering stronger, more honest communication in your relationship. Let's get started. Number 1. Fear of vulnerability. One of the biggest reasons someone who loves you might ignore you is a deep fear of vulnerability. When someone genuinely cares for you, they open themselves up emotionally, and that can feel incredibly risky. It's like standing out in the open with no armor, exposed to potential hurt or rejection. As much as they may love you, that exposure feels overwhelming. To cope with these feelings, they might withdraw or create distance as a defense mechanism. This fear of vulnerability isn't about you or the relationship. It's rooted in their own emotional history. People who have been hurt in the past often struggle with trusting others or letting their guard down. They know that the closer they get to someone, the more power that person has over their emotions. And the idea of losing control can be terrifying. Imagine this scenario. Someone has been through a painful breakup or betrayal. They've built walls around their heart as a way to protect themselves. Then they meet you and things start getting serious. They can feel themselves opening up, their emotions growing stronger, and suddenly the fear sets in. What if I let them in too much and end up hurt again? They think. So without warning, they pull back. They may stop texting as much or become less responsive, even though they still care deeply. It's not about you or your worth. It's about their struggle to balance love with the fear of vulnerability. They might think that a little distance will protect them from getting hurt. Ironically, the very love they feel for you can trigger this instinct to withdraw, because the more they care, the more exposed they feel. If you've listened this far, please leave a comment. I'm strong. Number 2. The push-pull dynamic. Another common reason someone who loves you might ignore you is something called the push-pull dynamic. This happens when emotions become so intense that the person feels the need to pull back in order to regain control. They want closeness, but they also fear losing themselves in the process. It's like being caught in a tug-of-war between their desire for intimacy and their need for independence. This push-pull dynamic can feel confusing, especially when one minute they're all in, and the next they seem distant or even unreachable. It's a complicated but common dance in relationships, often driven by an internal struggle. Imagine you're texting someone who's been pouring their heart out to you for days, sharing personal thoughts, funny moments, and everything in between. Then, all of a sudden, they go quiet. No texts, no calls, just silence. Naturally, you might start to wonder, did I say something wrong? Is something happening in the relationship? But the reality is, it's likely not about you at all. They're simply trying to balance their emotions. When someone is emotionally overwhelmed, the act of retreating can feel like a way to recalibrate. They pull away to protect their sense of self or to get a break from the intensity of their feelings. They're not rejecting you. They're just taking a step back to figure out how they can show up in the relationship without losing their individuality. Once they've regained their emotional balance, they come back, ready to be present again. It's an instinctive way of navigating love and independence, even if it can feel unsettling or confusing from the outside. Understanding this dynamic can help you approach their behavior with more patience and less personal frustration. Number 3. Self-doubt and insecurity. When someone loves you deeply, it can trigger feelings of insecurity. They might start questioning themselves. Am I enough? Do I deserve someone like you? Even though they adore you, their internal fears and self-doubt can overwhelm them. These feelings can be so powerful that rather than confronting them, they withdraw, hoping that distancing themselves will protect their vulnerable emotions. Imagine this. Someone is falling for you, but they've struggled with self-esteem or past experiences that make them feel unworthy of your love. They start to wonder, what if they realize I'm not good enough? What if they find someone better? To shield themselves from potential rejection or hurt, they pull away. It's not that they don't care. On the contrary, it's because they care so much. They fear their flaws will be exposed, and they don't want you to see them at their most vulnerable. In these moments, they might retreat to avoid putting their insecurities on display. Their withdrawal is a form of self-protection, as they're not yet ready to fully face the possibility that their fears might be unfounded. It's about trying to preserve their self-image and avoid the risk of feeling unworthy in your eyes. Understanding this dynamic can be crucial. If someone you care about is pulling away because of self-doubt, it's often not a reflection of how they feel about you. Rather, it's an expression of their internal battle with their own insecurities and the space they need to reconcile those feelings before they can be fully present in the relationship. Number 4. Fear of losing you. It might sound counterintuitive, but the fear of losing you can actually cause someone to pull away. When someone loves you deeply, they often develop a deep attachment, and with attachment comes the fear of loss. The idea that the relationship might not work out, or that they could be left heartbroken, can be overwhelming. To manage that fear, they might subconsciously create distance, thinking that by pulling back, they'll protect themselves from the pain of a potential breakup. Think of a person who is madly in love with you, but also terrified of what might happen if things don't go as planned. They may start to feel that if they let themselves get too close to you, they're giving you too much power over their emotions. The fear of losing you is so strong that they start to pull back, almost as if they're preemptively preparing for the worst. This distancing isn't about losing interest. It's a protective mechanism. They think that by backing off a little, they can somehow lessen the emotional risk. If they don't get too attached, then, in their mind, the pain of losing you won't be as intense. They're bracing themselves against heartbreak, even though it might seem like they're emotionally disconnecting from you. This behavior is often subconscious, and it can be difficult to understand from the outside. But it's important to realize that they're not pulling away because they don't care. They're pulling away because they care too much and are afraid of the potential emotional fallout. By recognizing this fear, you can approach the situation with empathy, giving them the space they need while reassuring them of your feelings. Number 5. The need for independence. Even in the deepest of relationships, the need for independence is a natural and essential part of being human. It's easy to assume that love means constant togetherness, but in reality, everyone needs some space to maintain their own identity and sense of self. Someone can love you immensely and still crave time alone, or time to focus on their own interests, goals, or friendships. Imagine this: someone you care about is pulling back for a while, and you start to wonder if something's wrong. They aren't being cold or distant out of disinterest. They're simply taking the time they need to recharge. For them, this time apart isn't about rejecting you. It's about maintaining a healthy balance. Just like we need rest to perform well at work or school, people need emotional space to stay grounded and whole in a relationship. When someone feels like they're losing touch with their own individuality, they might distance themselves to reconnect with who they are outside the relationship. This could mean focusing on personal hobbies, spending time with friends, or simply enjoying solitude. It's a way for them to re-energize so they can continue showing up as their best selves in the relationship. By giving them this space, you're not losing them. You're helping them maintain the emotional strength needed to be a better partner. Love doesn't mean losing your independence or identity. It means finding the balance between being together and nurturing your own sense of self. Understanding this need for personal space can help prevent misunderstandings and encourage healthier, more balanced connections. Number 6. Testing their own feelings. Sometimes when people feel deeply, they take a step back to test their own emotions. This might sound strange, but when someone experiences strong feelings, especially in a new or intense relationship, they need to make sure that what they're feeling is real and not just a temporary infatuation. By creating a little distance, they're essentially giving themselves the space to reflect and evaluate the depth of their emotions. It's like checking in with their own heart to see if their feelings are lasting and true. Imagine this: someone you care about seems to withdraw for a while, maybe even going silent for a few days or weeks. You might wonder, did I do something wrong? Are they losing interest? But in reality, this distance is not about rejecting you. It's more about them needing to sort through their own emotions. For instance, they might start to miss you, realize how often they think about you, or even feel a pang of longing when they're apart. This temporary space allows them to confirm whether their feelings are genuine or just a passing attraction. Once they've tested those feelings and reassured themselves, they often come back, sometimes even more committed than before. Think about it like a heart check. When someone pulls away like this, they're not trying to push you away. They're trying to understand just how much you mean to them. They want to be sure that the love they're feeling is real, lasting, and not something that's going to fade quickly. Once they've processed their emotions, they often return with renewed clarity and even stronger feelings. Understanding this behavior can help you see that their withdrawal isn't a reflection of doubt in you. It's a necessary step for them to reflect on the depth of their own feelings. Number 7. The silent love approach. For some people, love is shown in more subtle, indirect ways. They may not be the type to express their feelings through constant words or gestures. Instead, they might adopt what we could call the silent love approach. In their mind, Pulling back or giving you space is actually a way of showing respect and care. They believe that by not crowding you or overwhelming you, they're giving you the freedom to thrive independently, believing that this in itself is a form of love. Imagine this scenario. Someone you love seems to pull away, leaving you wondering if they still care. But for them, this isn't a sign of indifference. They might think, "I don't want to seem too clingy or needy." They may feel that by giving you room to grow, pursue your goals, or spend time on your own, they're showing you the ultimate respect. It's their way of allowing you to shine without feeling like they're overshadowing you. They might believe that love means trusting you enough to give you the space you need, without constantly needing to be involved in every aspect of your life. To them, this silence could be a way of supporting you by not being intrusive or overwhelming. They want you to know that they respect your independence and want to see you thrive as your own person, not just as part of a couple. The tricky part is that this kind of behavior can sometimes come across as disinterest or emotional withdrawal, especially if you're not aware of their intentions. But in reality, their silence could be a quiet, unspoken way of demonstrating how much they care. Number 8. Handling conflicts internally. Sometimes, when someone loves you, they might choose to handle conflicts or personal struggles internally, rather than bringing them into the relationship. This behavior is rooted in a desire to protect both themselves and the relationship. They might be dealing with something challenging, whether it's work stress, family issues, or emotional difficulties. And instead of sharing those burdens with you right away, they pull back to process everything on their own. Imagine your partner suddenly becomes distant, not responding as quickly or withdrawing from conversations. You might wonder if something is wrong between you two, but often this withdrawal is more about them trying to protect you from their own emotional turmoil. They may fear that sharing their struggles or venting their frustrations will burden you or create unnecessary tension in the relationship. In their mind, pulling away temporarily is a way of keeping the relationship safe and free from external stress. They might feel that by dealing with their issues on their own, they can keep the relationship strong without dragging you into their personal battles. It's a way of maintaining stability and not letting external problems affect the bond you share. Their silence or distance in this case isn't about rejection. It's about self-preservation and wanting to solve their issues before they impact the relationship. Once they've had the time to sort through their struggles, they may return to you, often feeling relieved and more ready to engage. Understanding this can help you realize that their withdrawal isn't a reflection of how they feel about you, but rather an attempt to shield you from their inner conflict and protect the relationship from unnecessary strain. Number 9. What you can do. Embrace patience and boundaries. So, what can you do if someone you care about seems to ignore you, even though you know they love you? First and foremost, understand that their behavior often stems from their own psychology, not anything you've done wrong. People have different ways of coping with emotions, fears, and insecurities, and sometimes their withdrawal is a reflection of what's happening inside them, not a sign of disinterest or rejection. The key here is patience. It can be difficult not to take their distance personally, especially if you're used to constant communication and closeness. But recognizing that their need for space isn't a reflection of your worth can help you approach the situation with more empathy. It's also important to give them the time they need to process their own feelings, whether it's a moment of self-reflection, a struggle with vulnerability, or a desire for independence. However, while patience is crucial, it's also important to set boundaries for your own emotional well-being. You deserve respect and clarity in the relationship, and while it's okay to give space, it's not okay to feel neglected or unsure for long periods. Communicate openly when they're ready, and let them know that while you respect their need for space, you also need the same respect in return. Let them know how their behavior makes you feel, and ensure that your needs in the relationship are also being met. Setting healthy boundaries allows you to maintain your own sense of self, while also being supportive of their needs. It's about finding a balance between empathy for their emotional space and advocating for your own well-being. So remember, if someone who loves you is ignoring you, it's usually more about their inner world than about you. Human psychology is complex, and sometimes the ones who care the most are the ones who pull back the hardest. Understanding these reasons can give you peace of mind and help you navigate these confusing moments. If this video helped you understand why someone who loves you might be ignoring you, give it a like, share it with someone who might need to hear this, and don't forget to comment and subscribe. Let's keep exploring the fascinating ways human psychology affects our relationships.